Guys, what's going on? It's Paul, combat veteran, MMA fighter, YouTuber, and today we are taking a look at this is combat footage coming out of the Ukraine war. Now, I'm going to add some caveats here. First off, this is not actually my first time watching this. I wanted to watch it all the way through to make sure that it wasn't going to depict anything that I thought was too personal or too grisly for my channel, right? And ultimately, as I've talked about before, I don't want to use too much footage or the more disturbing footage of the war, right, in my own content, because I think there's something morally wrong about using the especially disturbing stuff to get clicks. That said, right, there's a lot of people who want to watch these videos and a lot of people who don't understand what they're seeing, right? And so I wanted to use my expertise to try to break it down. And this video is perfect because it depicts Ukraine military operations, but it doesn't depict any sort of injury or violence. There's not even that many destroyed buildings. So I think this is a great example. This is actually coming from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, so a US-backed press agency. And so this is going to, hopefully, we can take a look at this and we will figure out and try to learn about what Ukrainian military is using, at least in this particular video. Now, why should you listen to me? If you're new to my channel, I'm Paul. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010, 2011 for 12 months. I was a platoon leader, led something in the order of 200 to 300 combat patrols. And I have seen it all. Earned a Bronze Star, earned a Combat Action Badge. Most important, though, feather in my cap, all my soldiers came home. So hopefully I can give you guys some insight into what you're seeing, and we can learn a little bit about how the Ukraine forces are fighting. So again, the link is down below if you want to check out the original. I'm only going to have it here in this small box, but you really should watch the original. This is from War Leaks. So let's get into it. All right, they're talking about how it does give a great look at the AT weapons here. So one of the things that intuitively makes sense is that you prepare your weapons mix based on the mission that you're going on. Obviously, when I would deploy, when I was go on patrol, I would look at the terrain that my patrol was going to be passing through, and I would decide my weapon mix based on that. Now, there's standard issue individual weapons, right? M4s, 249s, 203 grenade launchers, that sort of stuff. But in my vehicles, I had a lot more flexibility. I could have 50 cals, 240s, 240 Bravos. I could even have Mark 19 grenade launchers, right? And they all had different benefits and drawbacks, right? The Mark 19s, for example, had a 50-meter arming distance. So if I was going to be passing through a tightly packed village, the Mark 19s might be a liability, right? The 240 Bravo, for example, fires a lighter round. It might have a harder time punching through rock or cover, especially in, say, a mud brick hut. But it would have the advantage of being a lot more maneuverable, and we could carry more ammunition. So you have to look at things like the duration of the patrol, the terrain, the forces that you're taking, right? And you look at all of it and you make your call based on that, right? Obviously the best intel about the enemy you're facing. And so these troops, I imagine, expect to be encountering armored vehicles, right? A lot of armored vehicles, given the fact that this is an absolutely prolific amount of anti-armor weapons. In fact, I would probably say these are probably going on some sort of anti-armor ambush. Okay, so generally what happens is that you're going to have an assembly area. An assembly area is an area that, while still outside of, say, a secured base, is generally considered outside of sight, sound, and small arms range of any enemy. And that's where you're going to do your final checks, your final distribution of loadout. You can see very few of these guys are carrying rucksacks. And that's probably because their rucks are remaining in this assembly area. So they are moving out in a linear formation, right? A line formation. In US military doctrine, this would not be the sort of terrain you would do that. You would form this line only when the terrain was really tightly packed in. In an open field like this, you would want to spread out and have a different formation. But they may be looking to move quickly. They may also have a risk of mines. Areas may be mined or potentially mined, and so they're only going to walk a single file along a cleared path. Okay, so this terrain is much closer to what you might expect for a file. Again, could you stagger this a little more? Yeah, these guys are pretty tightly packed in, but again, you're going to change your grouping, how tight or your spacing, based on the actual threats to the area. So if you think there's a low likelihood of indirect fire, then you're going to want to travel in this sort of tighter formation, right? Okay, so they're pointing out that this is an NLAW, a type of anti-tank weapon. Oh, you see, there you go. You notice he put up a hand and arm signal to say, hey, halt a sec. They probably are trying to ensure that they're crossing, for example, a danger area, and they're trying to maintain some of their spacing, right? Okay, yep, you can see backpacks are looking really light. Nothing here, only a light assault pack here. This is a pretty heavy backpack. It's not even really a backpack, it's a duffel bag. So yeah, what this tells me is that they've dropped their rucks at the assembly area, right? They could have even entered via vehicle, and they could have an assembly area with their vehicles there, with a small contingent guarding it. And now they're moving out to their probably, again, I'm thinking ambush. I'm thinking to their ambush point. Okay, so you heard there was an explosion. Nobody seems to be alarmed. It was probably a good distance away. Again, in US doctrine, we would be staggered. So there would be people along this side of the road here, just to give you a little extra space so that you're not so bunched up that one grenade blast or one lucky artillery strike or even just one lucky, for example, a mortar round that goes long lands and takes you guys all out. But it's nitpicky. I can tell you again, I've patrolled miles in this exact formation if the terrain, because that's what the terrain forces you to do. Okay, yep, talking about the NLAW and RPG-7. Yep, so they're talking about having a AK-74s, right? These guys have a mishmash of gear donated from different countries, right? Acquired from the Russians, left over from the Cold War. This looks like a pretty Cold War era setup. It looks like additional rounds for their RPG-7. All right, so interesting. You can see they are now starting to set up in a more urban area, and they're moving with a much greater hustle. This is doctrinally correct, right? You don't want to expose yourself in these sort of areas if you can avoid it. And you see, unlike those woods, right? One, they're probably closer to their engagement area. They're closer to their ambush site, but they also are constrained. If someone was to shoot at them, right, they can't just, for example, dive into the woods or dive behind a tree. They're trapped. They would have to scale this fence. And so they're probably hustling through this linear danger area. That's what a road that you have to cross is sometimes referred to as a linear danger area. And what you may see when the camera pans, if it pans this far, you'll probably see some of their friendlies are actually not moving. They're static, probably a ways away behind cover, providing overwatch to make sure no one is setting up to ambush these forces that are crossing. Once this element crosses, they will set and they'll become the overwatch, and the trailing element will cross the linear danger area. Yep, RPG-7. Yep, there you go. See, he's there. He's pulling security forward. Right, these guys were probably a forward element that went ahead, secured it, said, yes, you're good to go, and they're hustling through. Yep, PK, probably a PKM machine gun. Yep, so these are their armor kill teams. Sometimes our anti-armor teams will be groups of 2, right? Someone will carry the weapons, some will carry the ammunition. You saw that with the RPG-7. Someone had the spare RPG rounds. You saw someone with a big heavy duffel. I imagine those were also extra rounds, maybe for the Panzerfaust. But you're going to have this. Of course, that assumes that an anti-armor team is a small element of your squad. This entire squad looks like primarily an anti-armor squad. So they obviously are going to consolidate, right? Looks like they have maybe a handful of people with the rounds, the spare rounds, and basically the rest of the squad is anti-armor. Yep, you can see here what they're doing is setting up security. And that is, of course, they're stopping, they're halting in a location. Maybe they need to call in an update. Maybe they're talking to their headquarters who's going to wait to give them authorization to move forward and set up. Maybe they're just doing a routine security halt just to sort of get a sense of the sights and sounds of an area. Maybe they're waiting for what's called a leader's recon, where a small element, including your squad leader, will go as an advance party, scout out the area, right? Scout out the actual ambush site, make sure no one's waiting to ambush you, make sure that everything you saw on the map or on the satellite is in fact as it appears. And then if everything looks good, that leader's recon comes back, finalizes what's going to happen, and then the whole squad goes and sets in position. So that's maybe, if I had to guess, assuming these clips are in chronological order, I assume that that's what we're looking at here. Of course, while your squad and leader's recon is taking place, the rest of the squad is going to get behind some cover and concealment and assume a defensive posture.
Продовжуйте наступ, закріпляйтеся на блокпосту.
If anyone speaks Russian, that would be great. It's interesting. He looks like he is consulting actually his map. He's using his phone as a GPS device. This is a great way of using your phone. I mean, so in some cases, right, a better enemy might be able to discern your location from this cell phone. But because Russians don't really have control of the airspace, and because it seems like their command and control is pretty ponderous, that the chances that they will be able to dial in on your cell phone and put artillery or a drone strike on you is probably deemed not that likely. That's probably why the Ukrainians are using it. And it looks like he might have finished his leader's recon, and he might be back here possibly checking the site on the map. He may be asking his hire, hey, can we move the site here or there? Hey, I'm actually on the ground. These are things that are different. The building you thought I was going to use as cover has actually been destroyed. Something like that. Or he may be asking for an update. He may be saying, hey, are we still good to go? Where do you think this Russian armored column is coming from? Right. So this could be after the leader's recon, in which he's confirming some details with his headquarters about what is going to be happening. But you can see everyone here is staying low, right? There's not a lot of cover that's going to stop rounds. So they're relying on concealment. This is a concealed location where it'll be hard to spot them. Okay, the reports say that a group of Russian tanks and infantry entered the village and took control. Okay. So to me, this confirms or lends credence to my theory that this is an anti-armor ambush. Doesn't sound like the Russians are fully in control. Ukrainian military closing in on the village to push the Russian elements out of it. Yeah, so they could be setting up, again, they could be setting up also for an attack. Where they are pre-positioned and then there'll be like one push and there'll be another element of this push. It's tough to say if this is actually them pushing it out of it. Again, it seems like based on how they're maneuvering that this may be some sort of ambush, but oftentimes it's true. Ambushes are more often done at night, though if you don't have night vision, it can be really disorienting to try to navigate at night. Okay, so it looks like they are going to be setting up to cross this river here. A river is another example of a linear danger area. And you have to think how vulnerable you are when you're in the middle of a river crossing a bridge. And so again, what we talked about, they'll do the same thing. They'll have near side security, check to make sure the bridge looks clear and that no one's on either side. They will send a small element of cross who will be their far side security. Once those two or those four elements, right? I say elements, they could be one soldier, they could be groups of two, they could even be groups of 3 to 5. But they're going to be set, and then you're going to have your main body cross, and then finally your inner security will collapse, or your near side security will collapse, and your far side security will cover them. Yeah, it talks about it's not clear on the outcome of the situation. I wonder if we checked on a map if we could determine. But this is, again, I think they said a village on the outskirts of Kyiv. Okay, so it's not clear there. You notice that they may think they have been shot at, but they're not returning fire. That also gives me credence that this may be an ambush, because normally, if you make contact with the enemy, you shoot back and don't ask questions. They may also not be sure. They may know there's friendlies in the area, and they may not want to shoot back until they have a positive identification. And it may just be someone close to them is shooting in a direction, but not at them. So I think discretion is the better part of valor here, and it appears like they are not necessarily shooting first and asking questions later.
Ще раз повтори. Два останні.
Oh, okay. Point out this detail. This man just got his boots soaked in that water, that freezing cold water, right? You got to get down. When you got to get down, you got to get down. No doubt about it. But man, that sucks. It sucks so bad. Oh, and he like keeps putting it in. I mean, I get it. He doesn't want to lift his head above this concrete. This is actual decent cover, which seems like a rarity in this terrain. You see that this, he's the commander, and while he is on this call, he has a security element pulling security for him. It's not clear on where the rest of his troopers are, where the rest of his soldiers are. But again, it's not even clear whether or not they are in the fight at this point. Again, he's consulting his map, and he's talking on the radio to his friendly forces. So it says to me that they are not yet in position, and that they've either encountered the enemy earlier than expected, and he's trying to give an updated position to his command, who can stay aware and abreast of where the enemy is and where their friendly forces are. Okay, so they are still moving into place, right? This again leads me to think this is really about an ambush. You can see they are starting to, yeah, right here they are deploying. Okay, they're actually, all right, this is actually an engagement they are in now. They are trying to maneuver under fire, right? They're setting up what looks like firing positions around here. Yeah, you can see they're taking cover behind this tree and small berm. These guys are taking cover behind this car. And all in all, I think you've got a situation where it's not clear. Are they trying to, is this the point where they will start their engagement? Either way, it doesn't look like this was either a successful ambush. It looks like they were detected early and pulled into a fight before they were set, or they were an attacking element and they've started their assault. Okay, so why is there so much fire? Well, what happens is when you start taking fire, you get into a battle for what's called fire superiority. And that is one person is putting down so much fire that the other group, the other unit, cannot even deliver sustained accurate fire. It's too withering, right? It's like even if you poked your head over top, you think that, man, I'm going to get myself whacked. I'm going to catch a bullet. And so you just stay down. And so the goal in these firefights is you're in a race to achieve fire superiority. Because once you can do that, then you can maneuver while the enemy's head is down. But if the enemy forces your head down, they can maneuver on you. And so this is why firefights like this tend to scale in intensity extremely fast, as both sides race for fire superiority. All right, shout out to those guys for standing up in this. So yeah, I think, what did we learn from this? I think we learned that the Ukraine military's small unit tactics seem to be solid. They seem to have internalized the basics. So the other thing that, okay, I'm going to address this because I think it's important, is that after every single combat patrol, right, whether we made contact or not, we would do a after action review. We would talk about what went well, what we needed to do better next time. And I would just say the things that I needed to work on. We talk about the things that the other soldiers need to work on, but usually we didn't call people out individually, but we would talk about what the unit needed to improve next time, right? What they could have done better. And this process is absolutely essential to growing as a unit, right? You have to at least take the time and think about what you need to do. So when I do this to the Ukraine forces, right, obviously, I'll tell you, they look professional. They look like a legitimate professional military. Definitely not amateur hour. So when I talk about they could do this, they could do that differently, that's all I'm trying to do is the same sort of self-improvement sort of analysis that I did for myself. Obviously, in combat, man, you make the calls that you can at the time, and the goal isn't to be perfect, right? That you're not trying to speed run a game. You're trying to make fewer mistakes than your enemy. So that is what you want to do, and the best way to do that is to engage in a little bit of feedback. And so that's basically what I try to do here. That's what I imagine they are doing. But unlike me, who has very incomplete information, they have complete information. So if there's Ukraine war footage that you want me to check out, man, let me know in the comments. Also, if you want to see some live reactions to other stuff, check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/combatvetpaul. Also want to thank our patrons on Patreon. If you want access to exclusive content, Patreon is the place. Thanks to Cole Foster, Command Unit, Caffeinated, Jakob Flavius, Chris, Dr. Shadowcop, Porter World, Time, Brandon Armitage, Tel Ruin, and Astro Hunter. You guys are doing me a real solid. And get access to exclusive content and a members only room on the Discord. All right, guys, thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one.